McLaren is a team that has been in the spotlight more recently than not, and the majority of that is down to the fact they've been able to find a lot of performance with a couple of upgrades. After picking up 86 points in the course of 4 races and qualifying just 11 hundredths of a second behind Verstappen during Spa's sprint race, McLaren's form seems to have fallen off a bit, and now their fight for P3 and P4 has been butchered by the latest development of events. Norris has bashed the team's latest decisions, but even with that, it seems like McLaren has a lot more in store that we might not be ready for. McLaren started the season on a very bad note, being basically the backmarkers of the grid and failing to utilise some good results, mostly because of the reliability issues of their car. However, once the upgrades started to come in Baku and continue to do so in Austria and Silverstone, we've seen the youngest drivers pair up, kill the competition and be head-to-head with Verstappen, even leading him for a couple of laps in Silverstone with Norris. Nonetheless, 86 points in just 4 races have put them in the top tier teams, and while many have labelled them as competitors for up to P2, their recent slump of performance shows otherwise. Lando Norris has been the latest victim of McLaren's tactic, as the Brit had to settle for P7 and his teammate finished P9 to pick up what is now considered modest points for the team. For things to be more painful for the Woking-based squad, their fiercest nemesis Alpine, one that was supposed to be falling apart after the departure of key personnel, has scored a podium with Gasly and 1 point with Ocon. Therefore, the P5 position is not yet cemented for McLaren, and their way of winning races is still long and thorny, something that Norris is not very happy about and might be considering his contractual situation sooner rather than later. McLaren's decision to stay out and push for a longer period of time with the soft compound tyre proved fatal for Zandvoort, and this is the decision that left Norris and Piastri stranded towards the back of the grid and in a desperate fight back into the points. It seems like the team didn't learn anything from 2021's Sochi GP, where Norris was very close to winning the race, but wrong tactics prevented him from actually doing it, in a very similar situation to lap 1 in Zandvoort. When talking about the result of the race, the Brit didn't hold back words, as he went on to say, "Not too satisfied with the result. The second half of the race was good. I think we did everything we could. We undercut a few cars and we had a relatively decent race. But we just lost everything in the beginning with the decision to stay out on the slicks when it was too wet. We just lost a lot more than we ever should have done." So that was pretty much not game over, but just that threw away everything that we worked hard for yesterday. So a bit frustrating from that side. But we fought back well, just we didn't have the best of race cars today. It was too tricky in dirty air. We struggled too much in the middle sector and therefore we couldn't fight. I couldn't get past Yuki and Hamilton, could just do 1 lap and get past everyone. So plenty of things to work on, but like we said, our weakness yesterday carried over a lot to today and things to work on from our side. It seems like whenever McLaren faces a low downforce circuit, their performance varies a lot, and while the upgrades worked wonders in Silverstone, what we're currently witnessing from the Woking-based squad doesn't look like a continuation of the massive improvement that they were able to introduce in the past couple of races. Nevertheless, even if everything remains the same, Zak Brown is now happy that the team doesn't have huge holes to fix in the upcoming period, and now, for the first time since 2010, the team can finally say that they're ready to fight for the championship yet again on pure merit in the foreseeable future. However, with such strict regulations, it might be a bit impossible, especially after what McLaren announced in the previous period. Even though they managed to steal Red Bull's intelligence and iterate it in their own way, it doesn't seem to be enough to produce a competitive car for podium finishes at least, if not wins, considering how dominant Verstappen is right now. McLaren is one of the few teams that decided to continue with upgrading the car in 2023, as they believe this move will pay off heavily in 2024 because they'll have a solid foundation to work on. Contrary to them, Mercedes have already switched the focus to the upcoming campaign, and their upgrades in 2023 would be either minimal or non-existent, an opportunity that McLaren could use to creep up on the Brackley-based squad in the later half of the season, even though that seems like a mission impossible at this point of the season. But McLaren is dreaming big, and right now their goal is clear: to challenge Red Bull in the near future. Even with their big dreams in mind, McLaren is remaining realistic, and they know that the package they brought in 2023 is not enough to challenge Red Bull. This is one of the main reasons as to why they're going to continue with the development of the car, and the fact that Norris grabbed P2 in qualifying in Zandvoort only goes to show that just because the race result was not something that the team would have hoped for, it's still the consistency that matters, and that factor is not something that McLaren is missing at the moment. When talking about this and how the team plans to close the gap to Red Bull with the next upgrade package, Andreas Stella went on to say, "To be able to do that, we need to keep developing the car, because I think at this track, Zandvoort, in normal, dry conditions, potentially Mercedes could have been there with us. They were faster than us in Hungary, they were pole position actually. So I think the current package is not enough to be able to fight with Red Bull, certainly, but it's not enough also to be going to a race and say, we're going to be the second force here. So we need to introduce further improvements, which is what we plan to do for the next couple of races." Furthermore, Stella went on to emphasise the demanding nature of Zandvoort and what kept the MCL60 from achieving top results, which is now something they're brushing off their shoulders and heading into Monza, the race that gave them the legendary 1-2 finish in 2021. The situation has turned from a very negative to quite positive one in McLaren, especially with the arrivals of Rob Marshall from Red Bull, Aston Martin's head of aero performance, Mariano Alperin, and David Sanchez from Ferrari, which means that now the goal is very clear ahead of them. Hit the full throttle with the two young superstar drivers and make sure that they'll be asked as to how the pecking order will look like in the remainder of the 2023 and the entirety of 2024. Zak Brown was very positive about the future of the team, and when talking about it, he couldn't hide the excitement of finally setting all of the pieces in one place. As he went on to elaborate, "I think, other than constant fine-tuning, there's not big gaps like we've had the last 5 years. Not having our own wind tunnel, having a 20-year-old simulator, being behind in CFD technology, those were big holes. Now this is going to be about fine-tuning. There isn't anything that we're staring at that is like, we need a new wind tunnel. All that will be in place." However, what is a huge hurdle for McLaren is the fact that all of these benefits, or at least a major chunk of them, will be felt in 2025, the year when Norris was promised a race-winning car, and the year in which we're bound to see a closer fight up front. Just like Brown said, if Red Bull was a team with two Perez-like drivers, then it's obvious that the technical regulations work, and it's obvious that his team has made some of the biggest steps out there, along with Aston Martin. But what McLaren needs to be very well aware of is the fact that Norris's future is still hanging in the air, and he might not buy into this entire project because of the fact that McLaren did finish third in the Constructors' Championship in 2020, and that really didn't change much for them in the upcoming period. Quite the contrary, it made things worse. Therefore, with all due respect, McLaren still has a lot of work to do in the simulator and in the Woking base facility. But one thing is for sure, they're on the right track, and they're going to make the entirety of the upcoming season a very interesting one to watch.